Everyone has their own idea of what treasure is. Pirate ships, ancient relics, buried riches. But for some, it's vintage warplanes. These rare airplanes can often be worth their weight in gold. P-51 Mustangs, P-38 Lightning Bolts, flying boxcars, B-29 bombers, the great aircraft that fought the battles of World War II. But of all these warbirds, there is one plane that has been missing from the world's collection. One of the most notorious of all World War II fighters, the Japanese Zero. One man who searches the globe looking for vintage airplanes to resurrect from near extinction is ex-military pilot Alan Preston.
There's such a wonderful historic significance to the airplanes, and they are so charismatic in their own right. I grew up being in love with these airplanes, and as I got to the point where I was able to fly them or collect them, it became apparent to me that there were certain holes in the collection which would never be filled unless you were going to go and give birth to it. And that process meant locating the wreckage of an airplane somewhere, regardless of how remote that location was, going to whatever lengths necessary to reestablish it as a valid flying machine.
Alan Preston would set out on a 5-year quest to find and restore an extremely rare Japanese Zero fighter, a journey that would lead him through 50 years of history.
We considered it the rarest of the significant fighters, very significant to Americans because it played such a big part in our involvement in the war, starting with, of course, the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Out of the misty Pacific skies, like tiny locusts, they swarmed in from the sea. At 7:55 a.m., hell broke loose. Man-made hell, made in Japan.
On the morning of December 7th, 1941, the Mitsubishi Zero came as a distinct surprise to American military intelligence with its appearance in the skies over Pearl Harbor. Prior to that time, the intelligence community apparently did not divine the fact that the Japanese had created what today would be called a world-class fighter.
There are a number of aircraft which simply ceased to exist after the Second World War. The Zero was one of them. There were precious few examples of it left anywhere because most of the war materials were ordered destroyed at the end of that conflict.
Of the 10,500 Zeros built, many were destroyed in combat. Dozens more were fitted with bombs and used for the infamous kamikaze attacks on American ships near the end of the war. A last-gasp tactic by a nation staring at defeat. At the war's end, General MacArthur ordered Japan to destroy her war machines and the plans to build them. That order sealed the fate of the Zero, and over 50 years later would send Alan Preston on a worldwide search to find a 100% original Japanese Zero.
There were a lot of wrecks out there, but this search was for one that would lend itself to restoration.
Extensive efforts have been made at restoring a Zero, like this one, constructed from bits and pieces of many other Zeros and fitted with an American engine. Although not entirely original and not up to Alan's standard for perfection, it embodies the spirit of a fine airplane with a storied history and fighting lineage.
This particular airplane is thought to have actually attacked Pearl Harbor. The Japanese national insignia, which is called the Hinamaru, is in the shape of the rising sun, also blood red in color, which the Allied pilots liked because it made a good target reference for them when firing at the airplane. These would be victory or kill markings against American or Allied aircraft. The outlined one is for a probable kill, not a confirmed kill.
If I had to go one-on-one, one aircraft on another in a classic dogfight, I would really rather be in the Zero. That's its forte. It was designed to be so maneuverable it would never get in front of an enemy's guns.
At the beginning of the war, it was the pinnacle of achievement of propeller-driven fighters. The Zero was a tremendously agile airplane, surprisingly long range. In its day, the best.
After years of searching the islands of the South Pacific, Alan finally located the Zero that fit his strict criteria on the island of Biak, Indonesia. Though only a rusted hulk, 70% of it was there and worthy of restoration. His battle had really just begun.
There are all sorts of government and local clearances necessary. And then you have the mechanical process of recovering the airplane without the advantage of modern tools. So it was like winding your watch back 1 century. You know, there were literally people trekking parts through a jungle on homemade dollies.
There was a lack of lumber in the area. The natives build their houses out of branches, twigs, vines. Natives were paid to disassemble some of their houses and erect a crate around the Zero, and it was shipped that way, arriving in Santa Monica, still in this very strange, almost folk art crate.
In the spring of 1991, the Zero had finally made its way back to Santa Monica, California, and was laid out in rusted pieces in a hangar they would use as their workshop.
Oh, it was like Christmas. And it was wonderful because, you know, the airplane was so exciting to us, not just in terms of having finally gotten it here so that we could begin the process of deciding what we were going to do with it, but really getting your hands on it for the first time. You know, as corroded and torn up as the cockpit was, you know, it was like unwrapping a series of presents. I mean, it was very exciting for all of us. It was a very light machine made of very light alloys, and it didn't stand up very well. It was never designed, it was never intended to stand up for that period of time. But it still looked like a Zero, and it was the best we were going to get.
Recreating these aircraft, whether allied or foe, as memorials or remembrances of a time past, the American opposition was the Grumman Wildcat and the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. Now, both of those fighters fought through the war with distinction, but had limitations in engaging the Japanese airplane.
This is the Japanese Zero. Take a good look at her. Your recognition of the Zero may save your life.
Sir, how soon do I get a chance to knock one up and down?
Soon enough. Don't get any idea the Zero is a pushover. With 340 miles an hour top speed, a service ceiling of 35,500 feet, and a normal range of 700 miles, increased by a droppable extra fuel tank, there's not much you can't do.
A lot of young American aviators died trying to turn and fight with the airplane.
Now, the Americans learned very quickly, and they developed their own tactics, which would be to gain superior altitude on the enemy, dive on the enemy using your speed, make a firing pass, dive again, pull up, and try to repeat that, but not engage with a dogfight because they wouldn't win. They were not maneuverable enough.
As the team researched the history of this formidable flying machine, they discovered it had a storied fighting history during the war. It flew with an outfit called the 3rd Sentai and was based at Bota Airfield in Indonesia. It fought the Americans numerable times in the skies of the South Pacific. The plane crash-landed on the island of Biak, where it remained for 50 years, a victim to the jungle and the South Sea elements.
There was a lot of damage that was done after the airplane had crashed. 50 years of sitting out in the jungle, the corrosion that happens. 70% of the actual airframe was here, and of that, you know, a very small percent that you're actually able to use. Most of the aluminum structure, especially in the wing, had to be built from scratch. And a lot of the stuff was just used by reverse engineering. You take the part apart and see how they designed it and what it was made out of, and then we build a new part, put it back together again.
This re-engineering process was slow and painstaking, and at this rate would add years to the project. What they needed were the original plans and data, the blueprints for the Zero.
It was a much more difficult problem with this airplane because all the data had been ordered destroyed after the Second World War. We spent years and years and years and leaned on countless relationships trying to find any source of drawings. And miraculously, through the help of Mitsubishi and the Japanese government, we were able to come up with the bulk of the drawings, which had, up until that point, pretty much been thought to be non-existent.
A set of blueprints for the Zero was saved for posterity by the Japanese that worked on it and realized the importance of saving the documents. That was their national symbol of pride, of cutting-edge technology. And to the Japanese, it's very important. And it's important to our country to remember what somebody else could build to do to us.
Alan and his team had finally located the technical drawings, and just when they thought they had leapt the final hurdle, they encountered yet another setback.
When we got over our first bout of elation, as always, we discovered there was a small problem. And that problem was that the plans were written in something called technical Japanese. And there simply didn't seem to be any people who could read technical Japanese. So we had to find some people, as you might imagine, much older Japanese citizens who had been familiar with that technical language and were still able to read it, remember it, and were willing to translate it to Japanese.
Breaking this code was the single biggest key to finishing the project. Now, after 5 years of struggle, by utilizing this new set of blueprints, Alan and his team were able to construct a 100% authentic Zero, one that even its Japanese designers would be proud of.
The construction of this airplane was simple in design, but very complex, and that made the restoration very, very, very difficult. There were some huge number, 5,800 sub-assemblies of parts, so countless parts.
The restoration and reconstruction phase of the Zero is complete, but their dream is to see it fly, and it will. But first, the plane must go through its final phase of pre-flight checks and testing, and soon, when it's put back together, Alan will take it up for its first flight in more than 50 years.
It's a treasure that took a lot of work from a lot of different people over a period of 5 decades, going back to when the Japanese built and flew the airplane to the people that restored and are going to fly the airplane. It's treasure that you could hear, look at, touch. And I think that's very important. It's three-dimensional treasure.
It's like finding a Picasso that didn't exist as far as anybody knew because of the rarity of the airplane and of the history that it represents. It's, one of the rarest of the rare finds.
This once feared aircraft is now the crown jewel in Alan's collection of World War II warbirds, and worth in excess of $3 million. It is simply the finest example of a Zero known to exist anywhere in the world. And after 50 years lost in the jungle, this proud bird will soon take to the sky, back where it belongs.
All airplanes are good, but fighters are like wonderful magical carpets.